studied your dual sensitivity essay many times, and something you say there is that you must do sadhana on the basis of the acknowledgement of your profound fear of death and the acknowledgement of fear altogether. And I feel I've understood more about fear altogether in recent years. But I don't altogether, I'm not really sensitive altogether to specifically the fear of death.
If you're not afraid of death yet, don't be concerned. You will be.
Well, beloved, the question arose because reading this essay many times I was simply struck by the fact that I seem to be more aware of other kinds of fear. And
other kinds of fear, what kind?
Just a kind of generalized fear or physical threat being in the city.
This doesn't seem to have some relationship to fear of death, do you?
Just seemed to me there would be...
Doesn't it?
Yes, well, yes.
I mean, anxious in the city. Anxious about what? Difficult, terrible things that can happen?
Yes.
Well, what difference would it make if you weren't afraid of death?
So all those forms of fear are kind of extensions of the fear of death?
What do you say? Extensions? Or are?
So in some sense all fear is fear of death?
What do you say? What is the content of it as fear? What is it threatening?
Some kind of threat of extinction, yes. Yes. Yes.
Threat of extinction, yes. Loss of objects. Loss of the ability to experience. Loss of existence altogether. Such things are
Yes.
just words used to describe something very fundamental, but it certainly sounds like fear of death in some, simply stated,
Yes.
wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yes, it makes perfect sense. Somehow I was kind of drawing a line saying it's not really death, something like that.
Well, not yet.
Right.
But all fear of death is about something that's not yet. Right. Otherwise, you'd already be dead. Until you are dead, you fear death. And then when you're already dead, it's already happened. Maybe then you're afraid of something else. But in any case, fear of death is always previous to death.
Yes, well.
You are afraid of death, then?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, very clearly.
In fact, you're afraid of virtually everything.
That's true.
Omniphobia.
Summarizes it. Omniphobic.
So, you do have some sensitivity then that you would describe as fear of death,
Yes.
fundamentally.
Yes.
And so, what about it? Is there a question then?
Well, I think you answered it, beloved. I think it was something about just not wanting to connect all that other fear to death, or somehow trying to keep that at a distance. But it seems really clear from what you said that it's all kind of extension of that. That's the ultimate fear of extinction, of, say, lots of objects, lots of all the life.
But there's something also more profound about it than that. Since it's not about your not being afraid of death, but in fact is fundamentally fear of death that you are describing in life, what is there to understand about it? What is it exactly? Because it's not a characteristic of death. Fear of death is a characteristic of life.
Yes, well,
You don't know what the characteristics of death are until you are not even merely dying, but actually dead. And then you'll know what that is, if you're capable of knowing it all.
yes, well,
You're also afraid of that. Maybe you will not be capable of knowing anything at all. And all of this, of course, has something to do with your fundamental ignorance of your actual condition and the nature of reality. So you're identified with the body-mind, and this is one of the characteristic experiences. But why is it a characteristic experience associated with being alive? I mean, virtually anybody who could have come forward and asked me a question something like yours and wound up confessing that they are, in fact, aware of being afraid of death, and that it is rather generalized and covers their entire life in some sense, and is more or less a constant, like a constant background noise or background sensation or background emotion to virtually every moment of life, although you try to ignore it or become diverted from it. But fundamentally, you are afraid. And you don't particularly like it, it would seem.
no.
But you also haven't entered into the examination of it very profoundly, because until a couple of minutes ago, you didn't even acknowledge that you were afraid of death. Or couldn't identify fear in these terms. Fear is inherently associated with self-contraction. It is the native mood of self-contraction. It is the emotional mood of the ego. It is the primal emotion of egoity. It is not merely fear of death, It is identifiable in natural terms relative to natural events and to fears associated with the current grasping on to body-mind states and not wanting to lose them or the capability for them. So it even has a more profound context, remarkably enough, than death. It's the fundamental act of life showing itself emotionally. If that action is transcended, then fear is transcended. There is a condition prior to fear in which there is no fear. This must be realized, of course, but it is so. And if that condition is realized, then all of conditional existence is transcended. All of the implications of the body-mind are transcended. All of the fundamental ignorance associated with egoity and identification with conditional states is transcended.